Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are diving into crucial aspect of securing our web API in .NET 8. We're going to look at Access Token Authentication. Sounds great, right? Whether you are just starting out as a developer or you are an experienced programmer, well, understanding how to implement and utilize Access Token Authentication is very important for ensuring the security and integrity of your applications. Alright, listen to this scenario. Suppose you have a public API that offers weather data. You want to monitor and control who accesses your API and how much data they use. In this case, you go in for an Access Token Authentication. Why? Because by implementing Access Token Authentication, you can track API usage, enforce rate limits, and identify users based on their tokens. This helps in managing resources efficiently and maintaining fair usage. Maybe you'll be saying that, okay, fine, I know how to implement BRA tokens or JWT tokens. So why is it necessary for me to also learn how to implement Access Token? Well, when we talk about JWT token or BRA token, it is stateless. If I say stateless, what do I mean? It means that the server does not need to keep track or keep any data related to that specific token that you have generated. The token has everything it needs for the API or for the server to authenticate. So talking about the issue and the audience, talking about the key, talking about the claims, such as the role, the username, the name, email, and etc. So the token contains all this. So when it gets to the server, the API needs to just authenticate it, and now as soon as it gets it, it's going to extract all these claims and utilize it in there. So you do not need to save anything. So in here, you cannot monitor API usage, how often the client make a request, because you are not saving this token in anywhere. But when you go to the Access Token, it is where a piece of token is being issued. Now this piece of token, you can include some vital information to it, or you can generate a simple token for this user. Now this token, a copy will be saved in the database. So in there, you can keep track of how often this token is being called, right? So you can keep track of that. And as soon as the user make a request, this token should be retrieved so you can gather the information of this specific token related to the client. So in here, you can manage API usage. So based on what you want to do, if you think that you want to keep track of API usage, then you better go in for Access Token, else JWT is going to help you. So let's see how we can implement that. I've already made a video on how to implement JWT token and APIs. So I'll put the video link in this description. If you haven't checked that, do that to get better understanding on how to implement that. But in this, we're going to look at how to implement Access Token Authentication. Alright, so launch of Visual Studio 2022 or higher, and in there we're going to create web API solution or project. I believe you can do that. Great, so do it, and let's get going. Okay, so I'll click on new project, and you know which template you're going for, ASP.NET Core Web API, and I'm going to say this is demo. So Access Token Auth Web API. Choose location to save your project. And when you are done, the next thing that you gotta do here is to click on Next, and to get this project created. Here we're not going to choose any type. We're going to build our own custom access token. So click on Create. Let's get this project created. So once we have our project created, there are some packages that we need to install in order for us to have access to this. We need to install EF-Core, SQLite, and also tools. I'm using SQLite here as my database, but you can change it to MongoDB, Postgres, or SQL Server, or any a database at all. So right click on dependencies, and let's go to Manage and Get Packages. Browse tab, and now let's search for EF-Core. So we are going to also install tools for migration. Then we need SQLite. Alright, so we have these packages installed. As usual, this is what you're going to be doing. Alright, so let's also install this. bcrypt, that is the package that I use to encrypt password often. So bcrypt.net. You can also use any other library which will help you encrypt password, but well, this is very easy to use and verify. So it's going to hash the key, the password, and it's also going to verify. So it's very easy to implement it. So that's the reason why I am installing this. Alright, so let's make sure we have these packages installed. When you click on this, you might have these package references being set up in here. And yes, of course, we got them. So I'm going to reboot project in here to make sure that everything is intact and working. So the next thing that we're going to do here is, before a user create an account, we need to have models, and that's what we're going to be using for our DB set. That's going to be for our database. So let's go in there and create a model quickly. So we right click on the project, and let's add, maybe you can add folder here, and it could be models, could be entities. And in here I am providing a model name of, let's say this is app user. So when a person wants to create an account in here, what are some of the properties information that I do need? So here I'm going to talk about the ID is automatically for this ID, because in EF core we must provide an ID which we use as primary key. Then I'm going to have maybe well, let me say name. Then I'm going to have, so with this I'm going to say this is email. Then I'm going to have the last one as password. So this is the information that I need. But aside from this, I want to also keep track of my roles. I'm going to also add roles in order for us to protect our endpoint, to give access to which people can have access to that and not. So in that, let me also create another one, and I'm going to say this is user role. Now with this user role class, I'm going to have default as an ID for primary key purpose. Then aside from that, I'm going to have, there's going to be integer, and that is an app user ID. So this specific user, which row is attached to this user. Then aside from that, I'm going to have the row itself. So you can add a lot of properties in here, but for now let's maintain this. So when I'm done, I'm going to right click on this, click on this, and I'm going to move this to a class or a file itself. Okay, so I have two models created. Now let's go to the same project. Let's create our folder. Let's make sure we have our data. We're going to create a DB set or DbContext. So this is DbContext, and that is authentication DbContext. This class should inherit from DbSet or DbContext, which is coming from the EF core. So we've installed this and we have to use it here. We need to create a constructor, and I'll pass in this DbContext. So I'm going to copy that. Then control period, we're going to say that generate a constructor for this. And now with this constructor, pass in this options, and in that I'm going to specify the DB set in here. Aside from this, let's create our DB set. So we say this is DB set, then specify our app user. Now with this app user, we want to give it a table name of same as app users or user account. can give it any name at all. So app users. Then the next one, I'm going to have another DB set. Now here is going to be user row, and I'm going to say this is user rows. Okay, so I have my table configured nicely. Let's go in there and go to connection. That is our program. And in here, let's specify a database connection. So I'm going to say this builder dot services dot add DbContext. Specify your app DbContext. In that, you need to specify an option, and now this option marks to options dot you want to use an SQLite, and in that, let's specify our data source. So you say this is so auth.db. So that is our connection name. We specify this in there nicely. Okay, so now that we are done with this, we need to perform database migration to get our tables and rows, everything configured. So before we do that, let's go and rebuild this solution. So make sure you pull out your package manager console. They can also be found under tools. You go to NuGet package manager, and in there you can see this guy is here. That is what you're talking about. So here, let's add migration. Let's say add migration. Give it a name. Let's update the database. And it is done. So we have our database attached to our project. So we have this in here. So the next thing that we're going to do here is let's create our simple DTO so we can use to as a payload when creating an account. Okay, because we don't want to provide an ID, which is going to be provided automatically by the EF core. So right click on the project, let's add a folder here, and I'm going to name this as DTOs. Now this DTOs, I'm going to add a model. Now this model is going to be app, what's a DB? Whoa, that is an app user DTO. Now with this, it can be a record, it can be a class. So if it is a record, this is what we need. So let's say this is record. And now with this record, I need to provide, or we need to provide, we need name, we need email, we need password, we need row. This is what so you're going to provide your row in here when creating the account. Okay, so let's say with this, there are a lot of use cases that you can here. Somebody or the admin needs to create a default account for you and then pass in your row, or you can create an account in there, then based on what you have in your email, you can generate a row for you. There are a lot of cases that you can use. This is one, so let's stick to this. Alright, so aside from this, we can terminate. We don't want to add any. So we have this here, name, email, password, and then row. So when you go to your app user, we have name, email, and password. Okay, but since we have a different separate table for the row, we don't want to include the row in here, but we want to include it when creating the account in here. So once you have this, let's go to our controller and let's create. Maybe we can edit the default one that we have in there. Let's change this to authentication, maybe. So authentication controller. So when we click on this controller, I want this to be an API. And aside from that, let's make some default cleanups. And with this, it's going to be an I action. Let's also clean out this. Okay, so this will be HTTP post. And now let's say this is register. Then we're going to have another one for login, and that is register. So we can grab a copy of this, and this will be login. Okay, so from the post register, if you want to register, what are the properties, or what do we need? We need this module as a payload, and that is an DTO that we created. So app user DTO, so this is user. But if you want to log in, we need just string email and string password. So with this, we're going to specify login email as parameters, then password in here. Okay, then for the register, what are we going to do in here? Let us inject our app DbContext, and that is the authentication DbContext class that we created. We say this is context. Aside from that, let's inject iConfiguration, and this is config. Okay, so in here, what we need, this should be let's say this is async. Let's make it a task of iAction results. Then in here, what do you want to do? Let's first check if user is equal to null. So if user is equal to null, maybe you want to return bad request. We are not actually focused. The focus is not actually on this, okay? Because this is going to work. So you want to actually see the authentication itself. So but if user is null, then know what to do. If not, you want to get user. You want to check if user already exists. So we're going to say that await. We have our context already, and we can say dot app users. Then let's use first or default, so we can grab what we need. This must be an async, which will come from the EF core, and in that we specify our user in here. So user dot, here we cannot use ID. We say email is equal to this user email coming in. Okay, now aside from that, we're going to say if get user in here is not equal to null, then it means user already exists. In this case, we can return bad request. So return bad request. But in case user is null, what do you want to do? You want to add it. So let's create an entity in here. I'm going to say that it is context dot, you have app users, so dot add. Then with this add, we're going to provide new app DB. Because since this is a model, a DTO, we need to convert it into this model. So model.user, and in that ID is automatically going to be provided. So we have to specify name is equal to, then we have this user.name, we have email is equal to, we have this user.email, then we have our password. So password is equal to, and now instead of here getting this password straight, that is what we're going to be doing. We can you can convert this byte to base default string, or we can even use the property or the package that we installed to encrypt this password. Okay, we don't want to convert this to base default string, so because we convert it, we can convert back, and it's very easily. But this third party, we can use that. So here, let's use bcrypt.net.bcrypt.hash password, and it's going to hash the password for us nicely. Aside from that, once you have this, let's save. So I'll wait to say context.save changes async. Now this is going to save the changes. So after that, let's also add the row. So we're going to say context dot, we have our user rows dot add. Then here you're going to add new user row, and now this we need ID automatically going to be set. So we need the app user ID, and we can extract it from the entity because we are getting a feedback. Then we can get entity.id. But before we add, I think here we must add .entity, and it gives us the opportunity to get an ID or extract an ID in here. Then the next thing that we're going to do here is the row itself. Now with the row, what are we going to do in here to get the row? We're going to provide a row, so we do not to worry ourselves. We can get this user.row. Assuming somebody, an administrator or a manager, is creating this account for you, definitely he's going to provide a row to you, and that is what this is about. Okay, so after we're done, then we're going to have an await, the same as context, but save changes async. We're going to also save changes. Then maybe let's return something like maybe success or created, whatever that you want to put it out there, you can go ahead and do it. So that's our registration. Now let's check for our login. Now for our login, first of all, what we need to do here is we're going to check if this user exists. So we can check maybe if this user is not even now, then because since they are just strings, we can go ahead and check them. So we're going to say that if string is null or empty, we know what to do, right? Pass in this email. Then we can also check for the other one. So let's use this pipe. Now we'll say if string dot is null or empty again for the password, then you know what to do. Then go ahead and I'll return bad request for me. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is let's get the user. So we are saying that this user is equal to await. We're going to have this context dot, then have app user data table. Let's have a first or default. So we see here we are repeating the same method. From login or registration, we get the user, and I'm here to getting the user. Okay, so maybe this is what we can do. We can extract this into a method, so we can be calling it in here, right? So we should not repeat ourselves, but this we are doing it. So I'm going to say this user mass user dot email is equal to this email coming in. Okay, now let's say here we have it. This should be async task of I action result. Okay, so we get the user from here, and now we can also check if user is equal to null. You want to also return something, so just do return bad request for me. Then the next thing that we're going to do here is, after we have the user, we can also verify the user password. So I'm going to say this is verify password. Now we get the user email existing. Let's check. So here, since we're using this bcrypt, it also has a an inbuilt property in here, or a method that we can verify password. So let's say it's a bcrypt.net.bcrypt. Then with this bcrypt, you can have a look at verify. So verify, provide the text, and this text here, it is a password. That's the plain text. Provide the hash one. The hash one here, it is the user.password coming in from the database or the context. Good. Now this is going to return true or false. So we're going to say if verify password. Okay, you want to make sure if it is false, then you want to return. What do you want to return? Maybe I can return not found, something like, and I can pass in some custom message. So I'm gonna say invalid credentials. Well, and the next thing that I'm going to do here after I see it, let's say now the user password, they both do match. What is the next thing to do? You want to go in there and extract the row. Let's get the row for this user, because you know in a row, as soon as the user creates an account, we have the row assigned to this user automatically. So we're gonna say that get row, and this get row, we're gonna say we can just go to this context So context dot user rows, then dot, we can have first or default async, and now in that you want to specify row dot, we have this app user ID, so we can grab this is equal to, now since you have the user in here, we can say dot user ID, and now in that we can extract the user row. Currently we have only one row. That's the reason why I'm not using the where clause to get the rows as a list. But in case you want to do that, then you can use this where clause to get the whole rows for this specific user as a list. Okay, so once you have this, we're now going to generate a token. Now in order for us to generate a token, we want to have a single format. A token, access token, we want to be in a format, so that anywhere that we see a token, we know that this token is coming from our system. Else, when you start to use random numbers, you're going to have a different tokens. Okay, so in order to do that, let's go to our app settings and then create a key in there which will be used to generate this token. So in the app settings, we go to in here. So in here, let's create a section, and now here, this section I'm going to call it as authentication. Now with this authentication, I'm going to have a key, and now this key, I'm going to call this as key, and I'm going to have a value for this key. So I have a long token here, or long key that I want to use to generate. Okay, so I have this as a key, so you can also provide your own key for that. Let's go back. So in here, we can extract, or we can get the key from the config file that we have been created with just now. So how do we do that? Let's have a string key. Now this key here, what we are saying is we want to add, so this is what we want to do. We want to get a key, so we can get it from config, then we can extract the authentication, and then we can grab the key. So once you grab the key, we want to also add maybe the username and the user ID. Okay, so here we can add the user name, and we can also add the user ID. So we are generating the code. Now this token, since you're having a centralized key, it means we have to add some extra information to the key, so it becomes unique to every user. And ID is going to be a unique. Let's say for name, it could be common, but we can add the name and now the ID, which will make this as unique. So we get the name, then we can also get the ID in here, and that is all we need. So we have this, and let's go and generate our access token using this key. So we're going to say that is an access token. So access token. Now we say our access token, let's use convert dot to base64 string. So we want to convert to base64 string, and now with this string, what you want to do, we need to also get this, we need to encode this. Okay, so let's use encoding. This coming from system.text.utf8. now this utf8, I think encoding, the namespace were not added. Okay, so dot utf8 dot get byte. Then with this get byte, let's provide our key. So we have our key in here. So we have our token, and now let's return OK. So with this OK, we can provide something like, so access token, then we provide the access token in there. Okay, so as soon as you create an account, you get a token, you get a row automatically set from the and from the payload. Then when you try to log in, you need to check all these steps to see whether you're authenticated, you are the correct user who registered already or who registered recently. You want to configure all stuff, and when we are done, we generate a token. Now in order to generate a token, we need to get your ID, your name, and also our key, so we can have the same format for our token. Alright, so we have this set. We can go ahead and run this and test this out. So our endpoints are ready. Let's go and register. So I'm going to specify a name in here. This is administrator, and the email is admin@admin.com. Let's have a password for this. This admin@123. Then the row is going in for admin. So let's hit on create. We must have success. And there you go. We have the success. So we can go ahead and try the login. We have the same email and this password. So this is what we need. So let's go to, maybe we can grab the email. Then let's go to login. Let's provide our email, and we have our password. Now let's try to execute this, and we must have a token. And yes, so we have our access token. So this is our access token. We have it set here. Great. So now we can send this to any user which has the key. It has our it has some dots in. It has the username and the user ID. So we can extract that ID and then make a request to database and make sure that we have this specific user info. Great. Now that this is working, let's go and create authentication or a custom authorized authentication scheme so we can authenticate this as soon as this token is being added to the header. Okay, so in here I'm going to create another folder. Let me name this as scheme or authentication scheme, whatever that you want to call this folder. You can do that. So I'm going to make it as scheme. It's responsible for authorizing this user. So it's going to be a class. And now with this class, let's create maybe custom authentication handler. It seems it's not typing. So custom authentication handler. So with this, it has to inherit from this authentication handler. So we say this authentication handler. And now this handler, we need to specify authentication scheme option. So let's specify that in authentication scheme. Do we have it? Options. Okay. So there's an we need to implement an abstract classes from here. Aside from that, we need to generate constructor. So the same place, generate constructor. Okay, so this is our constructor which is generated for us. Now what you want to do here is you want to include our app DbContext. Okay, so let's put our app DbContext here. Maybe you can integrate or you can add our app, and that's not even app, it is DbContext. You say this is context. Okay, so aside from, let's see what's it's telling us to do. Let's maintain. Okay, so we have our DbContext, and now with this we need to create and assign field. So let's assign this field. So we have our app DbContext assigned, and we can go ahead and start using it. Let's remove the system clock because we don't need this. Okay, so the issue is gone. Now let's go to our method in here, and we want to extract the header, the token from the header. So we're going to say that we have our header token. Then we're going to say this header token is equal to, we have a request dot, then in there we can have headers. Then this headers we can go ahead and use authorization straight. Let's get first or default. And what we're going to do here is we can say this is going to return string. So we're going to say that string dot is null or empty, and by this header token, if it is empty, then maybe we want to, let's remove this. We want to return authenticate result dot fail. And now with this fail, we're going to say that, hey, we're missing authorization header. Okay, now this should be an async task. So you're missing this. But in case we have a header found, then what are you going to do? Let's actually have our try catch, so that in case there's any issue, we can also return. So within our try catch, let's get our token. So we say this token, we're going to, since we encoded, we have to decode it. So we're going to say encoding. So you can also create a single service to handle that. Instead of repeating the same thing here, you can also do that. .utf8. Now here you want to get string. So at first we got byte. Now here we are getting string. And let's say this is convert. So convert dot from. So we converted to 64 string. By here we're going to converting from base 64, right? Then specify the token that we have in there. Now when this done, we can extract an ID. You want to get only the ID. So we say this ID is equal to, we can use int.pass. Now with this pass, we have this token at hand, and this token we're going to split it into dot. Okay, so where it has any dot, you're going to get the split. And now after it's split it, we want to return, we want to grab the first, second, third. So we have 1, 2, let's grab the third one. Okay, so and when we grab it, let's trim it. So remove all empty spaces. Then after that, we convert it into an integer. Now we have the row, so we have the user ID, so let's get the row. So we're going to say var get row is equal to, we can use this context. So once you have a service created, you can just go ahead and use this. So user row dot first or default, because you are still repeating the same thing, and that is not a good thing. So we're going to say that row dot app user ID is equal to this ID. Okay, definitely we're going to have in there. Let's also get user. So get user, and now with this user, we're going to say that await context dot app users dot first or default. It is the same. Now let's get user in here, and user dot ID is equal to this ID. So now we have row, we have user. Let's go and create our claims. So this claims equal to new array, and now with this, let's go and add the claims that we want to provide, the kind of information that we want to provide for our claim. So we're going to say that this is new claim, and now this new claim we must provide a claim type. So control period, it should come from system.security, then claims type. This should be claim types. So this claim types dot, you want to have maybe a name identifier, because we have an ID, so we can set in there, and that is even the ID that we have in here. Okay, but this should be in a string, so we can convert this to a string, and that is an ID that we have. Aside from this, what else you want to do? We want to also have another new claim, and now we have our claim types. So we want to have the name, claim types dot name, and now with this name we now have user, so get user dot name, we can get it. Then the next one, let's make this as check, and let's also add the row. So new claim, and in here we specify claim types dot row, and now with this row we have this get user. No, that is even get row, because we have the row already. Okay, so get row dot row, this is going to give us the row as well. Yes, so we have our claim. So this is a claim that we need in here. Aside from that, let's create identity. So we say this identity, then we say it's equal to new claims identity. Now with this identity, we need to specify our claims, that is a list of arrays. So from that, let's specify our scheme. So scheme dot name, I want to grab a scheme and pass in the name. We're going to provide this scheme in there when you register the service. Then let's have our principal. Now this principal here is equal to new claim principal, because here we're going to authenticate the user to our system, passing this identity. Then the next thing is you have to create a ticket, like a bus ticket, a plane ticket, and it gives you the opportunity to pass this. So we say this our ticket, and now this ticket is equal to new authentication ticket, so we can get authentication ticket as well. So new authentication ticket, so now with this ticket, let's pass in the principal that we created, and also the scheme name. Now when we are done, we are going to return authenticate results. Authenticate results dot, now we're going to provide success. So now it is created, passing the ticket that you have. The ticket contains all the essential details, including the claims, identity, everything. You have it in there. But in case we do have an issue, then we're also going to return this. Authenticate results dot fill, and maybe we can have a look at this. So invalid authorization header. Yes, so now that we have this set, let's go to our program and let's have a look at how we can register this. So in our program, in here, we go to our index. Now we're going to say that it is builder.services. So here we're going to add authentication. Then after adding the authentication, we provide a custom scheme. Okay, so you say this add authentication. Let's provide, so this netcode scheme, and with this scheme we're going to also add the actual scheme. So once you give it a name, add the actual scheme, and we can get it from here. And now with this scheme, specify this authentication scheme options. So authentication scheme options, and now with this options, we specify our custom authentication handler. In that, we need to provide our scheme. So that's the netcode scheme, and let's provide now for this action. That is all. Let's run this and check this out. While this is running, let's go to our controller and I use this scheme. So the authentication controller that we have created, let's have a method down here, and now with this we're going to be http get. Okay, now so this method name is protected, and now with this method is just a public string, and here this is get string. Get protected message, and we are returning you are authorized. And now let's protect this. So we're going to have this authorized keyword. In that we provide our scheme. So we have authentication scheme, and the scheme here is Netcode-Hub. Let's provide the row of this. Now the row here, we are saying this row, that is an admin. So if you're not admin, you cannot access this. Let's have admin here. Let's make the same copy and make it as user. Now I'm going to say this protected user, and the row is user, and generate protected. So there's admin, and that is user. So you're authorized, to bracket we have an admin, then to bracket we have user. So you can see that admin cannot access this, user can also access this. If you're not authorized, you're not going to see this at all. Okay, let's rebuild this again and try to get this. We're going to call each and see whether we're going to have a status code of 401 or it's going to be success. Let's wait and check that one out. Now let's try to get the admin. So try this out, execute this, and you're going to see that here. So they say no authentication handler is registered for this scheme. Okay, so let's check. That's a Netcode-Hub. Let's go to our settings, and that is a netcode scheme controller. You make sure you provide a Netcode-Hub, netcode scheme. Let's rerun. Now let's try to access it again. And you can see we have 401. So we are not authorized. Let's check the user 2. We have same. Good. Now I have Postman here. That's what we're going to be using to make a test. Now we have an admin account, so we can log in here and get a token. We can do that from here. And now we have, this is admin at admin, and that is a password. So if I click on execute this, we should get a token for the admin. Then we're going to add this token to the header and make request. So let's grab a token, let's go in here, and we want to access protected this endpoint. So into headers, we add our authorization, and you make sure you have the token in here. Okay, now let's access the endpoint. So for admin, execute this. We have 401. That is not what we want. We will need this one. So let's grab the requested path. Let's go to our Postman and now paste this here. Now once you have the token added to the header, let's click on get, and you might see you are authorized admin. So 200, right? Let's assume there's no token. Click on this and you have 401. So this is working. What if in case I want to access user? Check it out. You're not 401. You see? So you want to access this. It means you don't have an account at all. But if I check this, you must have 403. That is forbidden. Although we authenticated, but we are not allowed. Great. So we can go ahead and create a user account and also test that. So from the account, let's create a user one. So this is user. We have user at user.com for the email, password user at 123, and now the row here, that is user. Run this. Yeah, we got it. Let's go and log in. So try this out. Now we're gonna say this is user, and user. Let's execute this one. Now we have the user. So we say it is the same format, right? It means you can keep track of our token. Let's go to our Postman. We're going to clear this and add this one. Now let's make request. And now we have it, your authorized user. And there you have it. So you've seen how we can integrate a custom access token authentication in our web API. You can go more, you can go further than this. You can add a lot of bits on the use case. You can extend this. But actually you've seen how you can implement this in your web API. Thank you for joining me on this journey to understand access token authentication in .NET 8 Web API. You know, implementing this authentication method is a critical step to securing your applications and ensuring that your data and services are protected from unauthorized access. You can also keep track or manage your API usage and more. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. You can share this with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more in-depth tutorials and insight into web development and microservices. Your support also helps me create more valuable content for the community. So hit on the notification bell so you never miss any of my updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.